Joining us from Capitol Hill to talk about issues concerning Congress and the White House, Representative Eric Sorensen, Democrat of Illinois, a member of the Armed Services Committee. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
When it comes to the president's recent statements about the U.S. interest in Greenland, what do you make of the case that the U.S. is making for this?
Well, look, I am proud to have Danish heritage. I'm the only Sorensen here, and I share the same last name as the Danish ambassador to the United States. We talk regularly about this, but let's also understand what this administration is trying to do. We've got I sit on the Armed Services Committee. We have enough defense. We've been working with NATO. We've been working with Denmark. They have provided us the land use that we need in Greenland. There is no reason why we would need to have Greenland. And also, when you look at our defense against Russia across the Arctic Circle, we have Alaska. We have our state that is right up there, which actually goes north of the area that is inhabited in Greenland. So it is just preposterous. It is another shiny object that this administration is putting in front of the American people so that we lose sight of what's really important.
I want to play a little bit about the president. He was in the White House yesterday in the Oval Office, specifically mentioned Greenland, his interest. Play a little bit of that and get your response.
Important for the national security, including of Denmark. And the problem is not a thing that Denmark can do about it if Russia or China wants to occupy Greenland. But there's everything we can do. You found that out last week with Venezuela. There's everything we can do about things such as that. Not going to happen. We're not, I can't rely on Denmark being able to fend themselves off. They were talking about they put an extra dog, and they were serious about this. They put an extra dog sled there last month. They added a second dog sled. That's not going to do the trick.
Denmark fought alongside the United States in both Afghanistan
Thank you
and
for telling me
Iraq.
that. I appreciate it.
But
I have a very good relationship with Denmark, and we'll see how it all works out. I think something will work out. Yeah.
So, Representative, part of the case that the president makes is that other countries could take such an interest in the country as well.
Well, then he has some stupid quip about a dog sled. Come on. I mean, the guy's losing his mind. But also, let's understand what is most important here. It is the strength of NATO. It is the strength of all of our allies in Europe. That is what's keeping Russia at bay. It isn't just Denmark. That's the beauty of having allies. But this president is losing sight of the fact that there is value in having allies. Everything that he wants to do, he wants to go alone. What happens to the United States of America when no one comes to our defense when we need it?
You saw yesterday, as well as people watching C-SPAN, the effort to pass the War Powers resolution on Venezuela. That didn't go anywhere. When it comes to concerns about the president's going to Congress for these type of authorities, where do your concerns lie? And do you think that any type of White House permission will come to Congress because of these things?
Well, look, I'm concerned on the other side of the Capitol, what backroom deals were made with senators just last night that allowed the vice president to come in and cast that tie vote. Look, we need to make sure that Congress is at the table. It is Congress's job to make sure that we are looking out for our troops. It is something so important to us on the Armed Services Committee that we're doing everything to protect our troops in harm's way. And we need to make sure, and I was assured this week, that the operation in Venezuela is over. Let's make it crystal clear to the administration. It is over. You can't send troops in there without the approval of Congress.
Representative, you served on the Armed Services Committee, so I'm interested in your thoughts in recent days, last week really, that the president calling for a defense budget for next year of $1.5 trillion. What do you think of that figure?
Well, look, they want to cut, taxes for billionaires and millionaires and then obscenely increase the debt and the deficit. This isn't about, lowering the debt that our children and our grandchildren are paying. This isn't actually a Republican value. Yes, we do need to make sure that we are using innovation to our benefit, making sure that our national security is taken care of. Those are things that are important, but just ballooning the debt it almost seems to me like it's some sort of threat. If you don't go along with me as your supreme leader, then I'll just make it so that I have more money than I ever need to go and just pound you down. That's what it kind of seems like to me.
What case would you make, though, that the current figure, I think $900 billion when it comes to the Defense Department, is an adequate figure, or and if there were more, what could be done with that?
Well, look, we need to make sure that every tax dollar that people pay, it actually goes to good. There is so much waste. Even right now, as we work in a CR, as we are debating and trying to get the next CR to make sure we don't have a government shutdown, CRs are incredibly wasteful. We waste hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars by not coming up with a budget, by members of Congress and the Speaker of the House just pushing this off to the next year, not having a budget. It is incredibly wasteful. We do need to make sure that we're utilizing and we're good stewards of the taxpayer dollar.
On Capitol Hill, at least from the Democrats in the House side, there were a couple of announcements concerning the Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, an investigation by the Homeland Security Committee, a call for an impeachment on one side. Where do these go, and what is the value of these efforts when it comes to the actions of the Homeland Security Secretary? Well,
look, I was one of the very first people to sign on to the impeachment articles that Congresswoman Robin Kelly put forth just this week. Let's be clear here. Kristi Noem is failing the American people. She is not doing what is right with the Department of Homeland Security. The Department of Homeland Security was developed after 9/11 to make sure that our nation was secure from hostilities from around the world. Last I checked, Minnesota wasn't ground zero for it. She made it that way. She put thousands of ICE agents in there to inflame the situation. We need the tensions to go down. You know, I'm all for finding the criminals and taking the criminals and those people who are doing harm off of the streets and keeping our neighborhoods safe. But let's be honest, that's not what's happening in Minnesota. It's not what's happening in Illinois, and it's not what the Department of Homeland Security is doing. And so because she leads it, we're calling on her to step aside or be fired.
Because it's brought up by Democrats in the House, chances are it won't go anywhere, then why make the effort?
Well, I think we have to do everything. You know, and my constituents, you know, whether they're Republicans, Independents, or Democrats, and there are Republicans in Illinois 17 and Western Illinois that have had enough of this administration because this administration isn't doing anything to benefit them. You know, the grocery prices aren't coming down. You know, the cost of health care has gone up to the point where 1.5 million Americans can't even afford it. You know, they've been priced out of health care. This administration is failing them. So we do need to do everything. And I am doing this because I am hearing an overwhelming majority of the people that I represent on both sides of the aisle say enough is enough.
One of the things we talked about with the previous guest was this idea of the ACA subsidies and where they currently stand. You recently said that when it comes to a 3-year extension, as some would make, you be okay with that, make the case for it.
Yeah, so, you know, I think that there is room for compromise. Look, I didn't get to Congress with political baggage. You know, I came here by earning the trust of the people, by, you know, being with them every morning on local news. And so what we need to do is make sure that Republicans and Democrats can sit together at the table and say, what are the possibilities for the future? Not allowing us to go off a cliff, not saying, oh, the ACA expires, I guess we can't do anything here anymore. Because that just screws the American people. We can't do that. We have to come up with solutions here, right? So that's where I think there is room for compromise. You know, whether that is a 1-year extension or a 2-year extension or go with a 3-year extension. But the problem is here, nobody here on Capitol Hill knows what the Republican plan is. Everybody knows that they're against Democrats, but nobody knows what a Republican is for right now because they have to wait for whatever Donald Trump says that he's for, right? Put up your plan. You know, repeal and replace, what are you replacing it with? We've heard it for 15 years. We've never heard what they want to replace it with. Now's the time to put up or shut up.
You're on the Agricultural Committee as well. Where do things currently stand as future funding, and how does that go to the larger issue of all these appropriations bills being passed before January 30th?
Well, look, we need to make sure that we get a farm bill across the table. You know, I live in the hometown of John Deere, okay, where we bleed green and yellow. In Moline, Illinois. This is so important for farmers because farmers are literally holding on by a thread. whether it is tariffs, whether it is bad economic policy, whether it is the folks that are working on the harvester line in East Moline at John Deere, Harvester Works, right? We need to make sure that there's good policy here. But so as we go forward, it is making sure that we take care of our farmers, but they don't want to bail out. They don't want a check from the federal government. They just want to be able to do what is right on their farm. They want to raise their hogs, they want to raise their cattle, they want to grow the corn and the soybeans that are fueling and feeding America, right? That's what they want. Why aren't we allowed to give that to them? And so the Farm Bill has been pushed and kicked down the curb for more than a year, for 2 years now. Why can't we get it done? Why can't the Republicans put up that plan? I'm hopeful that our chairman, G.T. Thompson, will put it in front of the committee as soon as possible. We're ready for it.
Our guest serves on the Armed Services and Agricultural Committees, Representative Eric Sorensen, Democrat from Illinois. Sir, thank you for giving us your time this morning.
Have a good morning.
Again,